What is up, guys? It is Tuesday night, climbing night, a very successful climbing night. Ended up sending, I think, 3 to 4 new V3, V4s, or new to me. Flashed a couple, or on-sighted, depending how you want to say it. Really didn't know the beta. Went up and was able to climb them first go around. Also was able to reclimb some of the more challenging ones that I've done, and a couple climbs that I haven't gotten that have been around there. So very successful night after, I would say, a couple weeks of feeling kind of a little bit plateaued, a little bit stalled out. So I think that'll go really well with kind of my thought process for tonight. I talked about this the other day about kind of measurement systems or how to measure yourself or what you should really focus on when you're measuring. Because a lot of times what I think we do, or a problem that we have, or a problem that I've had in the past, is focusing on the results that we get and putting all of our goals around results. And, you know, in the world of running, let's say that could be just getting faster. And in climbing, it could be climbing more challenging grades. These are very crude measurement systems in a certain perspective, and they're very results oriented. And what ultimately I've found is that you have very limited control over the results. It's not necessarily just this linear thing in which you put in work and then all of a sudden you get the results. Over time, generally speaking, over enough time, if you remain consistent in your work and in challenging yourself and you put in enough volume, you will achieve those results. But by focusing on the results and the outcomes that you really want, whether to be faster, whether to climb harder grades, whether in whichever realm that of achievement that you're after, any pursuit that you're after, I think that it can be very disheartening when we're not getting the results on a certain timeline, like setting 8 weeks until X happens, and we can't really control that. The only things that we can truly control is input actions or inputs, and I like to design my systems and my processes or my pursuits towards goals around inputs. I think that's the way to solve this problem, because we set these results-oriented goals or only focus on the outcomes that we're getting, and that can be very disheartening when we do hit these plateaus, like before tonight in climbing, or in running. I've hit several plateaus in which I'm just maintaining. And sometimes those are just temporary. You don't have to change training at all. And 4 weeks later or 6 weeks later, this is Citra, 4 weeks later, 6 weeks later, you'll break through that plateau. So it's just maintaining consistency and sustainability, right? But ultimately, I've had much better luck and I have much more control, and I think you will too, by controlling the inputs that you would have. So I design my entire run program, and the controls that I can, or the elements that are under my control, are the workouts and successfully completing those workouts. Right? If I run 4 times a week and I'm gonna do that for 12 weeks, I can measure myself. How many of those workouts did I ultimately complete? Climbing is a little bit more challenging, maybe a little bit more complicated problem. And focusing in and putting in quality repetitions in 2 different regards, I think, in climbing, if I'm getting specific about those examples, right? One, just solely volume of really trying to build endurance, build technique through very controlled repetitions of easier grades or climbs that I find to be pretty medium level of difficulty. And then also climbing right at the cusp, climbing climbs that I can't finish, and so they're a lot more intense, or climbs that I have finished that are a challenge, reclimbing those, a couple sets, a couple repetitions every time I'm in the gym. This ultimately will push your fitness, and it'll push your level of performance. Let's put it that way, because it might not be a fitness-oriented pursuit. So in each of these regards, what it is designing and focusing on the factors that I control. Very stoic principle, right? And what I would say is, in my experience, that helps me apply myself much more readily, and it allows me to create focus and focus on discipline and consistency and other factors than just the results. factors in which I can measure success and actually be successful based upon different criteria instead of just achieving the goal. And if I can remain consistent, if I develop a sustainable program with balance, right? And balance comes down to a lot of times volume and intensity, basically making sure that you don't burn out or get injured. If I design it with balance, the right volume, right level of intensity across that volume, then I can improve. And this goes for goals outside of just fitness oriented or exercise oriented, physical goals. I think this goes for mental goals and emotional goals. And I would say that all inputs are not created equally, right? So one of the examples that I was thinking of when I was preparing and thinking through this today is a lot of times people set goals relative to the amount of books that they want to read in a year. And if this is in the pursuit of personal development or self-development or growth, reading 50 books in a year might not change you at all. Because truthfully, what's going to matter more is the application of principles gained or learned from those books, right? And so the inputs that I would measure, if I'm truly trying to improve and pursue a goal, and let's say it's around leadership, or it could be around difficult conversations, or it could be around improved conversations in relationships. It could be any number of things, right? I want to apply principles from that book and measure those as inputs towards the goal that I want to achieve. It's not just reading 100 books or 50 books or 20 books or 10 books, whatever it might be, in a year surrounding a certain topic that we want to improve in. It's going to be the application of knowledge, right? Because reading is a much lower tier and thereby, in a sense, intensity towards learning a goal. Doing is a much more effective way to learn. And that's in the pyramid of learning. You can check that out. Ultimately, if you're facing a problem of always setting goals relative to the outcomes and the results that you really want to achieve, and that's the sole way that you measure whether or not you're successful, I think over time you're going to be less successful than you could be if you switched your perspective and mindset and switched the design of your recognition and reward system. By switching it around to being input focused, and thereby on things 100% within your control, you'll have a much more likelihood of being able to stay motivated, being able to increase and apply your discipline to hit those inputs and achieve what you're after. So ultimately, looking through my notes here, just want to make sure. I think that we want to be sure, like I said, all inputs aren't created equally. So what are ways that we can qualify those inputs? Well, one of the ways that I noted, or a question to ask, is can this input just be meaningless volume, right? If I were to go and I said medium grades for climbing, right? Or if I only do zone 2, ultimately zone 2 will help me improve in running, but every now and then I need to incorporate speed work of different kinds. And I need to have high aerobic work and VO2 max work. And so there's varying levels of intensity. If you think about in the weight room, I think you want to, one, if you just go in and lift at max intensity all the time, I think you're going to run the risk of injury and burnout versus having some balance in that design. And sometimes it's about volume at a lower weight, a lower intensity, and sometimes it's about intensity at a lower volume. And developing that balance towards your systems, because sustainability and consistency is really the name of the game. The longer you're able to do something, the more likely you're able to achieve a level of success. So if we lengthen our time horizons and we stop focusing on these outputs and we stay committed to the process, focused on the inputs, I think we'll be a lot more successful. So I appreciate you guys very much. Hopefully that helps. Have a safe night.